Welcome back, everyone. I'm sitting here with Beth and George. Gage, how are you guys? Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Beautiful day, and again, start to mountain film here in Telluride, and you guys have a new hot ticket, Bitter 70, a new documentary film. You're not new to the game. You guys have Fire in the Mountain, which I absolutely love, the 10th Mountain Division in World War II film. Why don't you give me a little premise about what Bitter 70 is all about?
I'll turn it over to the writer.
Oh,
all right.
Okay, well, Bitter 70 is about Tim DeChristopher. Tim DeChristopher is a young man who was a student at the University of Utah, was very concerned about climate change, global warming, and there was an oil and gas lease auction happening in Salt Lake City. The Bureau of Land Management was holding at the very end of the Bush administration. And most of the environmental community in Salt Lake felt that this was an unfair auction, that things hadn't been properly investigated. And he went to protest and saw that nothing really was happening. Nobody was noticing the protesters outside. Went inside and was given a bidders paddle, and he started bidding. And
so this
Did you mention, I'm sorry, I didn't hear if Beth mentioned that these lands were right outside of Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park, which is, you know, the playground or the bicycle area and the hiking area and the camping area of an awful lot of Telluridians.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Just a couple of the most beautiful parks in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so here's this young guy, a student, goes to protest, somehow gets in there and bids for to the tune of like $1.8 million, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then they realized during the BLM auction that this guy's, did he just keep going at one point?
Well,
or?
he sat there for about 40 minutes before he bid, because he didn't go in there planning to bid. But when they gave him this paddle, he realized, hey, I could really do something here. I could disrupt this. So he thought it over, and in the beginning, he kind of would raise his paddle intermittently and kind of push up the prices for the oil and gas people. Then he started really thinking about what was happening and decided that he would kind of hate himself if he didn't try to stop this. So he started bidding, and he just kept bidding when he started. And yeah, after he'd spent about $1.8 million that he did not have, one of the undercover agents came up and escorted him out. Spent a few hours investigating him.
And now, George, the repercussions of this, did these auctions get nullified because of his
Well,
work?
what happened is when the Obama administration and Salazar took over, they said, like Beth said before, the due diligence on this auction was never done. These are the most pristine lands in the United States, some of them. This auction never should have happened, so they basically invalidated the auction. So at that point, following the story, already having been filming, my feeling was, wow, this one act of peaceful civil disobedience has done such a great thing. Tim is a hero. There's not going to be any major repercussions from this. And isn't this terrific? And we'll wrap up a nice short film and enter it in mountain film. But then what happened was the Obama administration decided to indict him for government fraud with the possibility of 10 years in jail and $750,000 in fines. Then it really started to become, wow, this is really happening.
And he's not here today because he's in federal prison for 2 years.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, he's since July 26, 2011, when he went to hear what his sentence would be. It was a 2-year sentence, and he was taken immediately and wasn't able to go home and, you know, drive his car home.
One
or
last cheeseburger
nothing,
or something.
nothing.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, he gave me his car keys and said, I think I may, whatever. I don't want to tell too much of the ending of the movie. But the thing that really outraged me was the lack of information that the judge allowed the jury to hear.
Yeah.
They were not allowed to hear where these lands were. They weren't allowed to hear that there were Arches and Canyonlands. They were not allowed to hear that 27 other people in recent history have done the same kind of thing with no intention to drill. There's a legal concept called the lesser of two evils. He definitely was committing the lesser of the two evils. And then there's two more that...
And the most important thing was that the jury was not allowed to hear that this whole auction was invalidated,
right,
because it was improperly held to begin with. And Tim knew that if they couldn't hear any information and they just thought he was some kid that went in and sort of monkey wrenched an auction for no reason, that obviously people wouldn't be very sympathetic.
And they prosecution went after him hard. It wasn't just a slap in the wrist and a warning, because they were trying to deter others from doing something like that.
Absolutely.
But Tim's message is be empowered, not deterred.
And why were you part of the trial? The whole were you there? And
Beth
there.
was in the courtroom, and I was outside with the camera waiting for something to happen, because we never knew when the verdict would happen. And but Beth was in the trial the whole time.
Yeah, and you know, it was difficult, because you just kept hoping, just let him say something, let them get some kind of information out. It wasn't inspiring. Our justice system that day was not, those days was not inspiring.
And there was always so many supporters for Tim, you never knew what door they were going to escort him out of. So it became a very difficult thing as a filmmaker, because just when you thought it was door number 7, they shoot him out door number 9, because they didn't want all those supporters to see him and cheer and all that kind of thing. So they were trying to keep the press down, keep the awareness of what was going down, and certainly trying to suppress the activists.
And that's what, and speaking of just inspiration, that's why I find this story so fascinating. People protest every day. People get arrested for protesting every day. What makes this story just so special and so unique? Is it just a case of civil disobedience with a young guy doing something just cool, or what do you think?
Well, there are two things. Number one, I think that the reason that it's why he's in prison for 2 years is because they really felt there was a threat. Tim didn't keep his mouth shut. The judge out and out said in his sentencing that if you had kept your mouth shut, basically if you hadn't continued to protest, continued to talk about this issue, the whole thing probably would have gone away. But that wasn't his point. His point was to let people know that we had an unfair system happening. And so what's important about it is exactly what the government was afraid of, that he's inspired other people. And what they were hoping to do by sentencing him to prison, to a serious prison term, was to deter other people. And what's happened, hopefully, is that people have not been deterred. They're not inhibited. And hopefully it will inspire people to make their points. And Tim has always been about peaceful civil disobedience. And so, you know, we need to have the voice of the people heard.
And I totally disagree with the judge, because one of the things that Tim did, waiting for this trial to happen, because it was postponed like 9 times, is he went back to his roots, West Virginia. Started to learn a little bit more about mountaintop removal and so forth. So he got himself a little bit involved in that issue in a very positive way, because anybody that's seen mountaintop removal knows it's just awful what they do to those mountains. And he did some other very, very, I think, good actions while he was awaiting trial. So I think he was doing nothing but good acts while he's waiting for the trial.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he come up with the money to pay those first payments of these bids? Which is astonishing.
Yeah, within like, I think within a day or two, they had a website up. You know, his church really embraced him. He's part of the Unitarian Church in Salt Lake City, and they really embraced him. They got a website up overnight. They told, you know, people what had been happening. It was on the news in Salt Lake City, and within a week or two, he had $80,000+ to make the down payment on the land. The BLM would not accept it.
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
It is.
Are you in contact with him now?
Well, we are. Beth emails quite a bit. I've written some letters. One of the problems is that we drove all the way to the first place he was in prison, which is Hurlong, California. It's about 1,200 miles from Telluride. We drove there. All along the way, they're telling us your permission to visit hasn't come through yet. It's going to probably come through in a couple of days. We're driving. We get there. Visitation rights denied for the Gages. And then we found out afterwards that they were pretty much permanently denied at that facility because we're, quote, filmmakers.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we're hoping that Colorado will be a little more lenient.
Yeah,
we just want to visit them.
I know. I mean, it's an incredible story. Now, you guys have, I mean, this is not your first rodeo. You've premiered, what, 6, 7 times in the Telluride Mountain Film Festival?
I know we've had 7 films in Mountain Film, I think we've premiered just about all of them. Even Fire on the Mountain that premiered at Sundance had already played here first. They just gave us a waiver, because usually you have to premiere at Sundance, but they gave us a waiver
to get in. That's great. And obviously overwhelming support. I mean, I see Bitter 70 on the hot dog cart and walking down Main Street.
That's
George.
That's my advertising background.
But it's good to see. I mean, is this one of the, the lead films for the festival?
We hope so. I mean, we don't know. We're playing tomorrow night, Friday at the Palm, but we have a lot of stiff competition playing at the other theaters. But one of the things that I'd like to say is that how important Telluride has been to us as filmmakers, Telluride and Mountain Film. I at least became interested in making documentary films because of Mountain Film. And our first film, Fire on the Mountain, premiered at Mountain Film. And, every film since then has had a connection. And we found out about Tim through one of the local newspapers. We saw what he had done. And within 2 or 3 days, we'd made contact with him and started this film. So it's been a fabulous run and ride for us.
Yeah, this is a great place to kick it off. We've done 2 works in progress, one in Cleveland, one in Ashland, but to be able to have our premiere here at our hometown, where so many of Tim's supporters exist, where so many of Tim's supporters are within driving distance and so forth. The great history with Mountain Film, the great respect we have for Mountain Film, and then we go on to 2 other pretty cool festivals, one the Human Rights Watch Film Festival in New York City at Lincoln Center, and then Michael Moore looked at the film personally and is bringing us to Traverse City to his festival. So this is a great launch on a great run that we think we'll have, and a great run of making people aware of this problem and aware of this subject and aware that we've got to make change. We've got to save this planet.
Absolutely, and it's nice that you can do it in such a grassroots setting like Telluride, and that's incredible.
And I think that's where it's all going to happen. It's always going to be grassroots, that will change the world if it does.
And now I know that all your films have been very different, but I mean, does this stand out in any way compared to others like Fire on the Mountain or, the River Dimension?
Well, the most similar to probably is American Outrage, about the outrageous treatment of the Shoshone Indians in Nevada through mining, not 100 years ago, but right now. So that would be the most analogous. The other analogous part about it is we became really tight and really friendly and great respect for Carrie Dan, her sister Mary. We have nothing but the most great feelings for Tim DeChristopher and the most admiration, and we're buddies.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and the film premieres tomorrow at the Palm?
It does, and we premiere at 6:45, and Terry Root, Dr. Terry Root, who's a Stanford scientist, is going to be there, and she is the scientist that was sort of the impetus that got Tim sort of freaked out about global warming. And so she's going to be here. She's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And then also one of Tim's attorneys is going to be here, Pat Shea, and Tim's mom. Wow. She's never seen anything.
And there'll be 20 or 25 peaceful uprising followers outside the Palm, I'm sure, singing Peace and Resolve.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds absolutely terrific, and hopefully just Tim DeChristopher out there knows it's happening, and
he knows.
His girlfriend's giving him a report right away. She's driving the next morning with an in-person report to Tim in prison in Englewood, Colorado.
All right, that sounds good. Well, Beth, George, thank you so much for joining us today.
You.
Congratulations on the film.
Britt. Thanks so much.
I'm sure no one doesn't know about it with all your snazzy marketing tips and the hot dog cart, etc. But thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Diggity Dogs.
Thank you, Kodo. Thank you, Telluride. Thank you, Mountain Film.
Yes, and Telluride TV, and it's great just that you're offering people opportunities to make films and learn about camera equipment. So thanks for joining us.